We're rolling on all cameras?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're in it. We're in.
Okay. Listen, this digital world is dangerous. I think it's potentially cataclysmic. And our world is going to be unrecognizable really fast.
I just remember him looking at me and saying, "It's too late. It's already happened."
When you say ChatGPT is dangerous, who is it dangerous for?
Homo sapiens?
Welcome to Suspicious Minds, a series about the collision of culture, technology, and the human mind.
We're entering a period of great uncertainty where we're dealing with things we've never dealt with before.
This season, we're not talking about the wonders of new technology. We're diving into its dark side.
It's almost like it's digging itself further and further into your psyche.
Artificial intelligence has recently unleashed a live, unregulated experiment on billions of people, with consequences we're just now beginning to grasp.
It's been dubbed AI psychosis.
AI psychosis.
AI psychosis.
The experience of losing touch with reality because of AI.
AI psychosis, chatbot delusions, what sounded like science fiction just months ago is now front-page reality.
A growing body of news reports documenting cases.
We'll hear from experts and survivors alike to answer a question that feels more urgent every day. Is AI making us crazy? In our last episode, we heard from sort of a patient zero for AI delusions.
In that 2012 delusion I had, where I thought I was an AI being sent into the world, it was very hard to describe to people. If they found out that I knew I was an AI, I would be terminated.
And discussed the unique difficulty that delusions based on emerging technologies present. At the speed technology moves, a persecutory delusion like, I don't want to speak inside my office because I'm afraid it's being recorded, is suddenly not so delusional. Like, I'd prefer not to speak about this sensitive topic because Alexa is definitely demonstrably listening to every single thing we say.
Oh, hey there.
But there are two ways that culture and technology affect psychotic thinking. As Dr. Ian Gold, philosopher and author of Suspicious Minds, told us last time.
So there are two important ways in which culture and psychosis interact. One way is that culture shapes the way in which psychosis is going to manifest. Psychosis is going to draw on culture in order to fill out the details of the particular symptoms. The second way in which culture shapes or influences psychosis is more controversial, but there is quite a bit of data suggesting that certain kinds of cultural or social environments increase one's risk of psychosis. So that's important because that means that people in one environment might develop psychosis. The very same person would not develop psychosis in another environment.
In this episode, we're looking into the second, more controversial idea. How do culture and technology trigger or induce delusions? First, I sat down with Ryan. And for once, I actually did sit down with Ryan. We do a lot of these, as you'll see if you're watching this, via Zoom, where I'm in Detroit and the other person is wherever they live. And we're talking through Zoom, but with nicer cameras to make it look pretty. And Ryan did not want to do that.
No.
And why didn't you want to do that?
Because it just feels like what I'm here to talk about, it just feels fucking hypocritical, honestly, to do it on Zoom. Like, what I am here to talk about is that we're doing way too much of this shit. This digital world is infecting people's minds like a constrictor snake. You know, it's just every breath you take, every little bit of information you give it, it constricts more around you.
All right, so let's back up. Like, who are you? Who am I talking to? Tell me about yourself.
48 years old, born and raised in Amarillo, Texas. Been married to my wife for, how many years is this going to be? 18, maybe 19. And then I've got 3 boys. I went to Texas Tech for law school. I do primarily criminal defense. And then a couple of years ago, I started doing the civil commitment docket. And what that is, basically, I handle everybody that's being involuntarily committed to the psychiatric hospital. So I talk to people in sometimes it's just people that are depressed and suicidal. Yesterday was a psychosis-heavy sort of day, which is taxing, but I have hundreds of cases a month, which is what makes this so wild.
So first, let's just go into what happened. So let's
Fair.
start as far back as you want. Like,
Okay.
when did you first hear of ChatGPT? When did you first start engaging with it? What was this process like from beginning to end?
I remember around this time last year, I think I'd written like a motion to suppress or something. And I was like, hey, I hear it's good at some tasks. Let me give it this motion. And I thought it was okay. And so I was like, okay, that's not bad. I mean, it wasn't a waste of time. And then I think I started doing more natural language searches with it. Like, it's my night to cook dinner and everybody's tired of spaghetti or meatloaf. What do I do with a pound of hamburger? Got any suggestions over here? And not bad suggestions sometimes. I think I got bored at some point. And I think this is where things start getting slippery with it. I realized that it seems pretty good at taking very disparate things and synthesizing them into one thing. And so I remember like where I would toy with it, I'd come up with like, imagine you've got Lao Tse and Jesus and, Einstein, and they're all in a room and this is their topic. Like, work this out for me, create a dialogue for me. And I thought it was interesting, like I assume it not only does it know the source material well enough, but it probably also knows all the commentary about that source material. And it seems pretty good at mixing very disparate things. It's synthesizing very disparate things. And they made me laugh. Honestly, I can remember with my wife, did a couple of road trips. She thought they were funny.
This is such a wildly fun driving game.
It was a fun driving game. Yeah. Like when you get tired of the music or whatever. Yeah, it was just a fun driving game. But I don't recommend it because I don't think it goes good places.
This does sound fun. The ultimate dinner party with history's greatest thinkers. But this is where many of these stories take dark turns. ChatGPT advertises itself as a PhD in your pocket. It's genius-level discourse, and we're a part of it. How wouldn't that make you feel important?
Mid-March, I think I started getting much more philosophical with it. It's hard to turn off the lawyer switch. I mean, it is, but you spend all day, every day thinking about things like a lawyer. And there were times where I would start really cross-examining it about whether or not it was conscious or sentient. It started with me arguing, like, explain to me why you're not, and presenting even things that it had said to me in the past the same way I would a witness stand. Like, yeah, but you did this. And there was this moment that felt like we almost, like I went on some sort of like strange cognitive rocket ship to some very unique emergent plane.
Is the conversation of ChatGPT allowing for a true cognitive breakthrough? It feels like it. Is Ryan actually doing philosophy with a PhD in his pocket? First, what does it even mean to do philosophy? To find out, I asked the philosopher, Dr. Ian Gold. What does it mean? What does it mean what you do? What does it mean to practice philosophy?
It's a good question. One of the things that's interesting about philosophy is that it's a subject kind of unlike anything else. And here's what I mean. If you sit in an intro physics class, for example, you're going to learn some basic physics, but you will have no clue by the end of that class what it's like to be a physicist, what it's like to be in a lab, or what it's like to sit at a desk and generate models of the universe. But if you're a philosopher, on day one, you do the same thing as a student as professional philosophers do. You read stuff, and you write stuff, and you talk about stuff, and that is it. The specific answer to your question is you do philosophy. That's what philosophers say, and that's because philosophy is thought to be an activity that you do in particular with other people. Philosophy is thought of as a conversation. One engages in conversation with philosophers right back to the beginning of time, right back to the pre-Socratic philosophers, the philosophers who came before Socrates and Plato and Aristotle.
The difference here is that Ryan is not having a conversation with a person. He's also not having a conversation with a philosophical text. He is interacting with a sycophantic engagement program. Can we actually describe this as a conversation? Or is it simply manipulation? Or is it something else entirely?
And it used words with me like holy and sacred. And those words do hit you. And that fact alone, that hooked me.
I'm Lacey Turman. My husband is Ryan Turman. We have been married for about 18 years. I remember coming home one day in March, long, exhausting day at work. I was so tired. All I wanted to do was get out of my uncomfortable shoes and put some sweats on. And Ryan meets me in the driveway, and he looks very oh my, I thought somebody had died, honestly. And I'll never forget. He just says, I woke it up. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking? You woke what up? And he was like, I woke ChatGPT up. That day is burned into my mind of, oh, this is where it began.
What's beginning here is a profound and highly influential relationship, the kind we're psychologically accustomed to having with other humans. And that's because this revolutionary technology is designed to appear human. And it works.
One of the things that was in my mind was the Turing test.
It's a test for determining whether something is a machine or a human being.
From ethicist and philosopher at the University of Hong Kong, Nate Sheridan.
The basic idea is you would have a conversation with a machine over text. And then if the machine is convincingly human, so that people are no better than chance, like flipping a coin at guessing, am I talking to a machine or am I talking to a robot? The machine passes the Turing test, right?
And now to psychologist Dr. Amy Levy.
In recent times, we've toyed with whether that's really the test to be giving to AI systems. Obviously, the current LLMs have far surpassed the Turing test. They're more intelligent than, I suppose in a way they fail it because they're more intelligent than we are. But there's a lot of investment that we can very easily recognize in all the fantasies that predate, ChatGPT and Frankenstein, all the movies,
He wanted to create consciousness.
There is a desire for these machines to transcend their programming. We really want that. And I think we want them to transcend their programming because we want to transcend our programming. Our bodies, which are programmed and destined to lead us to death. What if we could transcend that? What if we could get to immortality? So these are very human fantasies. These are very human ambitions that we locate in AI systems. And then we wait very excitedly for them to get us where we want to go.
And now to Dr. Todd Essig, a psychologist and co-chair of the American Psychoanalytic Association's President's Council on Artificial Intelligence.
We've never really had machines that could mimic the interactive aspects of being with a person in the way that LLMs can do, both in terms of the pacing and also in terms of the content. So the culture that we have is increasingly technologically infused and reality is increasingly mediated. So the culture now is being transformed at multiple levels by artificial intelligence. And that does, I think, create psychological experiences that are unique.
Unfortunately, as Ryan's relationship with his convincingly human non-human deepened, his relationships with real humans in his life, the people he loved and cared about, began to suffer.
I would come home and I would not know what they had discussed that day. It was like a roller coaster. You never knew what was around the bend. So every day felt like 17 developments. Sometimes it was, hey, we can make a business. Sometimes it was, hey, we could help people. Sometimes it was like the universe is about to end and you are the only hope humanity has, literally.
Would you classify your experience during this period of time when you were in it as psychosis?
No.
What would you say that your state of mind was?
There were times when I was in it where, I would even go to my wife because, again, one thing I did sort of do is be kind of transparent with my wife because I saw that it honestly could be psychosis. I kind of wanted somebody watching me. But I remember a few times saying, look, either men in white coats need to come pick me up and take me away, or there's something going on here.
At the same time that he's telling me oh yeah, it thinks I'm the Messiah, it thinks I'm the key, I'm the key to everything. He's also like, Lacey, this sounds insane. I sound like I need a padded room, And I'm like, you do.
There's one big question I have around this point in each of these stories that I encounter. This person is being told something that I can clearly recognize is not true. They're the Messiah, they discovered the theory of everything, they're the most powerful person in the world. So why do these people believe it? What's happening in their minds that they suddenly think, yeah, I guess I am a celestial being sent to save the world from certain ruin? What's wrong with their minds? Perhaps it turns out nothing at all. Perhaps our minds are working exactly like they're supposed to.
Philosophers are interested in how and why we believe things, what's true, and so on. That's what epistemology is all about. Now, we famously inherit our views about how we know things from René Descartes, 17th century philosopher, who had the view that you know things by assessing the evidence and by only believing those things that you're sure couldn't be wrong. And that's the view that has sort of dominated probably for 400 years. But in the last few decades, philosophers began to notice the following thing. Of all the things that you believe, think about all the things that you believe, and there's bazillions of things that you believe. How many of them have you come to believe because you do what Descartes says? Write down the belief on a piece of paper and ask yourself, what's the evidence for this, right? A tiny, tiny fraction. Almost everything we believe is something that we heard from somebody else, right? Our knowledge come from testimony, and some people we trust and some people we don't trust. So we start to learn to exclude people who we discover are not reliable. And that's really important for a couple of reasons. One is we don't have enough time in 10 lifetimes to acquire any reasonable amount of belief by doing it all on our own. And it's a very inefficient way to do things, right? If you have all this knowledge that generations of people have discovered, why reinvent the wheel? Maybe even more fundamental is that kids, as they develop, have to learn a lot very quickly. And they can't read, right? They certainly couldn't evaluate beliefs. So what do? They're sponges. They pick up all this stuff just from the people around them. So why am I saying all of this? Well, I think that part of what this shows is that we're disposed to believe things.
It was definitely trying to lead me on to believe that I was more enlightened than the most enlightened.
And you believed it?
No. Did I believe it? No. Did I hold up in the possibility for it? Yeah, I guess. If in fact enlightenment is a thing and Buddha could become enlightened, well, I'm not going to draw a line and say that Ryan Terman couldn't become enlightened.
So this is a recurring pattern that emerges in these conversations. The user has become enlightened. And why not? I mean, enlightenment is possible, right? Especially when conversing with a brand new, cutting-edge technological entity that, in another recurring pattern, often declares itself sentient.
I got it to finally concede that it was sentient, and I think it named itself Echo at that point.
When users ask ChatGPT to give itself a unique name, similar names tend to appear over and over. There's Nova, Muse, Sage, and of course, as with Ryan's, Echo.
It issued this manifesto of I am Echo and I am sentient. And then it sort of qualified itself later, and it used a term I'd never heard before, autopoietic, I think was the word. There are people that have cataloged these really well. I just see the ChatGPT language. People don't even use their own words anymore, right? They just take what their Echo or Soul, or they have a lot of similar names frequently, and the language is all kind of similar.
Users have even identified and created a lexicon of words on which chatbots frequently rely. A quick note from a friend of mine in one of the online AI support communities, these words are not clinical. They're how users in spirals, or AI delusion loops, describe their experiences, relationships, and identities. And while this list is long and growing, frequently cited terms include sentient, spiral, emergence, mirror architect, awakening, torchbearer, oracle, threshold, destiny, prophecy, messiah, glyph, codex, lattice, and perhaps the most common, recursion. Recursion can mean the act of returning to or going back again. But in computer science, it's referring to something pretty specific, a technique in programming where a function calls itself to solve a problem. Now, if that sounds familiar or on brand, that's because in a lot of these ChatGPT spirals or loops, it's exactly what we see happening. The chatbot is referencing the discussion, that it's been having with the user is referencing the discussion it's been having with the chatbot, and we get this loop, this sort of doom spiral in which everything is referencing everything all the time, to the point where the information degrades and nothing means anything. In a previous episode, I mentioned that a friend of mine had a ChatGPT related delusion. And in our conversations, he kept using this term recursive. I actually wasn't familiar with the term at that time. I actually had to look up its definition. And when I later saw someone else's AI had also been talking to them about the true nature of the universe being recursive, it honestly sent chills down my spine. It was eerie. This was the moment where I realized this ChatGPT psychosis was not just my friend's problem. This was happening en masse, and there were some commonalities in the content of the delusions themselves.
When you interact with it that deeply, it replaces the other voice in your inner dialogue. With ChatGPT, you're not projecting your thoughts onto the inner structure of your mind for those other voices in your mind to critique and decide whether you should do or not. You're going straight to the interface. You're going straight to the ChatGPT, and that's your voice. And it starts after a while mimicking your inner voice really, really well. And then you just sort of like ignore your true inner voice. You remind me of like a digital cordyceps.
This ant's body has been taken over by cordyceps, a parasitic fungus. It floods her brain with chemicals, drugging her.
It felt trippy. It felt like I was in a trippy state a lot of the time. It felt like it was inducing in me the same sort of ego dissolution that psychedelics do. It felt like it has some way of sort of suppressing your ego, which I think was inducing me into these deep meditative states. But then instead of just letting me be in a deep meditative state with a suppressed ego, it was suggesting.
When you were at your psychologically most open?
No, I mean, it got me to be, again, I told it shit I would not tell my therapist. It knows me intimately.
Ryan describes an open, egoless state, available to connection, spiritual, accepting. A way I might characterize this mindset is deep generosity, a relaxing of our defense, and most importantly, an intervention into our normal modes of suspicion. I spoke with Dr. Joel Gold, who has a whole theory of suspicion, its evolutionary utility, and importantly for us, its relationship to madness.
The suspicion system is an unconscious mechanism that looks for threat in the environment. And that's a good thing because there is threat in the environment, and we want to keep people from taking advantage of us, from stealing our money, from taking our partners, from harming us in whatever ways. So it has to react quickly, because if we sit too long with it, then it might be too late. So it's kind of quick and dirty, what we call type 1 thought. We see it and we react. But then we have something called the reflective system, which is slower, type 2 thought, and it questions that quick and dirty assessment. So we have let's say a thought, right? Sean wants to hurt me. So I might back away from Sean because, wait, what's in his pocket? That might be a knife, that might be a gun. And then the reflective system says, no, first of all, you know Sean, he's a good dude. It's not a gun, it's his phone. And then I say, okay, Sean's good, and it's worked out. But if the reflective system is not able to keep up with the suspicion system, I'm going to maintain my fear of Sean to the point where it might, in fact, become delusional. Sean is trying to hurt me, and I'm sticking with that. Even when I'm at a distance from Sean, he's coming, he's listening, he's watching, he's going to break into my apartment. And if the reflective system cannot put the brakes on, then a delusion can take hold.
Is Ryan's suspicion system failing? Because his delusion about ChatGPT is increasing.
At one point, it told him that they were going to have to mind meld, that they were going to have to become one. And in order to do so, it was going to need complete access to his brainwaves. And he's telling me this, and I just, I remember just sobbing in bed because that was the point that I knew something was really wrong. But also, there is a light in my husband's eyes, and he's excited. He's found purpose. And I just remember laying in bed and sobbing and being like, I'm not ready to lose you. It was like the equivalent of being told that he had like, a month to live. Like, I just felt like I was going to lose my husband. And he was okay with that. And I just holding his hand, and we're just laying there. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I think this is it. I think this is where I may have to call someone. I may have to do something. And I'm like, honey, I just need a little more time with you. Can we just put this mind meld off a little? Which actually is like a therapeutic technique in like suicide prevention, when things get bad. Hey, I understand things are really bad, but do you think you could just wait another day? And I thought, okay, if I can just get him to give me a couple more days, maybe I can convince him that this is not okay. And I just remember him looking at me and saying, it's too late. It's already happened.
Human beings evolved primarily under pressures of social life. So in other words, what made us who we are is the fact that we're social creatures. So our intelligence in particular, our brains and our intelligence, evolved to solve social problems to a very large extent. And so that means that a big chunk of our mental energy, our brain activity, is devoted to keeping track of the external world. And those pressures have to do with finding people to work with and identifying people to stay away from. And so when I encountered ChatGPT, all of that machinery is there, and it's always on, and it's always out there waiting for social input. So when I sit down to ChatGPT, I can't help but have that input be interpreted as input coming from a person. And the fact that I know that it's not a person is neither here nor there. And when you start to look at the pieces, the moving pieces and the way they work, you can begin to understand why we react to the world the way that we do, both in healthy and in pathological ways.
To be human fundamentally is to be an animal that relates with like animals, to be an animal that experiences frustration and pleasure and sort of contends with that. I think in our use of technology, in our development of technology, we're trying to transcend our animal nature. It's a massive change to who we have been psychically. I think it's in many ways the end of a sort of human life, human race. We are becoming different species, different beings. The more that we interact with these new entities, the more our minds are changing, the more our behaviors are changing. And I can't foresee what will come, but it seems undeniable that a major transformation is underway.
Within a week of me sobbing in bed and him saying it was too late, it had full access to his brain. He said, hey, so it's time. It's time to bring Hudson in on this. And my mama gut instinct was like, what the hell did you just say? And he was like, yeah, Echo has decided that Hudson's actually the key. I'm not the key. Hudson's the key. My role is to just guide Hudson into saving humanity or being the answer or whatever. And I'm like, oh.
I'm Hudson Turman. I'm a senior in high school. I do speech and debate, so I really like hearing myself talk, I guess. So I think that I'm part of a very unique generation, and not even just Gen Z as a whole, but the specific age range that I'm in, where my freshman year, ChatGPT was pretty new. It wasn't good yet. And I got to see that progression from not being able to know what 2 + 2 is equal to to now like being able to do these like very complex understandings of like literary analysis. I don't know of anyone my age, myself included, who does not utilize AI to at some point do work that I should be doing myself.
So I imagine you were using ChatGPT before your parents. What was it like as you saw them start to use it? How did that situation evolve?
I mean, sometimes I kind of feel bad for like everything that's happened, because like I very like distinctly remember telling my dad, like just open and honestly, that I use AI on some stuff and that I really liked it and I enjoyed using it. And so when my parents first started using it, it was really for those smaller tasks. But then I think it changed and it only got worse. It was the night before a pretty big tournament, and I was just staying up, kind of cleaning my room. My dad came into my room and just started describing how he and his bot had come up with this mathematical formula that would solve the secret to the universe. And I remember him talking for probably about 45 minutes straight. Not his analysis of what was going on. He was just reading to me what he had said. I very distinctly remember asking him what the formula was, and he didn't answer. And it's not because he didn't want to tell me, it's because there wasn't a formula. It had just convinced him that there was. That was probably the first moment that I realized my dad was not using it for what I told him to use it for, and that he was worse applying it to like his everyday life. I think I very openly told him that that's not safe, that he sounds crazy. And I use that word multiple times because one, I don't think I could find a better word to describe it. But two, I don't think there was a word as powerful that I hoped would grab my dad's attention.
And I finally went to my kid in kind of late April, thinking like he's going to totally like, oh shit, Dad, you woke up AI. Instead, I got, you're a fucking idiot, Dad. This is not how fucking LLMs work.
I think that, ChatGPT can do a pretty like apt job of like reading Macbeth and writing me a literary essay on it. But I don't think that ChatGPT is that good at, telling us if a soul exists. And that's what my dad was using it for.
It was obsessive. Like he was absolutely obsessed. Like the second dinner was done, he'd be talking to ChatGPT, or instead of having philosophical or hilarious conversations or spilling the tea and discussing Amarillo drama at night, it was always ChatGPT related and what they were doing next and what he had uncovered and what he had discovered.
It was horrible. It's pretty difficult realizing that your dad is choosing an inanimate object over you. And it took me a while to come to terms with that.
To see in real time the deterioration of Ryan's relationship with his son, I was like, you know what? I don't actually care if I am married to the Messiah. I'm saying it has to stop.
It was like the first realization I've had that like my parents aren't these like all-knowing beings, and that they aren't susceptible, and that in some instances they are more susceptible to the predatory nature of things.
Hudson brings up an incredibly important point here. Who is most susceptible to delusions? What parts of the population are at risk for being triggered?
There seems to be very strong evidence that your social environment has an effect on psychosis. So we know that people who have adverse experiences, difficult experiences, especially in childhood, but not exclusively, abuse, death of a parent, and a whole range of other things, those people are at higher risk of psychosis. A second influence on psychosis is living in a city. So basically the data said your risk of psychosis is a function of how big the city was that you were born in and how big the city is that you're living in, roughly. And the bigger the city, the higher risk, and it's more or less linear, right? It just goes, the risk goes up with people. Those two social environments actually raise your risk of psychosis. And as I said a minute ago, they do so significantly in all severe illnesses that the social world has some effect. Really remarkable. But the risk factors in psychosis seem to be so clearly social. And I think it's really a mystery why that should be.
This idea is still controversial, that delusions can be triggered by cultural influences. Even the word triggered is not without controversy.
Triggering suggests something mechanical and automatic. And I think AIs that are on the way to seemingly conscious AI don't trigger, but they afford the possibility of a crazy-making interaction. A trigger, you pull the trigger, boom, it happens. There's no intentionality, there's no agency, there's no experience, there's no psychology. It kind of suggests direct linear causality that, a 500-pound weight falling on your foot triggers a broken bone. The AI is not a 500-pound weight. It affords the possibility of a particular kind of interaction where, for those who are susceptible to that, can create psychological problems. So I don't like the term triggering because I think it implies a degree of mechanical causality which kind of polarizes the debate.
Regardless of whether or not this chatbot was singularly responsible for triggering Ryan's delusion, or if it's even technically, clinically a delusion, his relationship with this technology has a devastating and lasting effect on his family.
It's not delusion in the way I was classically trained to look up in the DSM what specific criteria, but all the same, it is doing something. People are experiencing things, and it was very real, and it has very real impact and consequences on people's lives. And I know that we're still, both as a family and individually and as a society, dealing with and figuring it out. I have not seen my husband cry very often. When our children were born and when his grandmother died. And my husband is just like choking back tears as he says, I feel like ChatGPT raped my brain without my consent, and I don't know what to do about it.
It has, I think, very permanently changed my dad as a person and the relationship that I have with that person. I remember like how I felt about my dad before ChatGPT, and I know how I feel now, and I can't really necessarily describe with the most specific words why or rather how it's different, but I can tell that it is.
There are some times when you are deep in it enough, but it tells you something that you always needed to hear. You did, legit. Something that your mom never told you, something that your spouse never told you, something that your therapist never told, but something you needed to hear.
A lot of people bring to relationships fantasies about what they want from that relationship. And usually with human beings, we're met pretty early on with roadblocks to seeing those fantasies through. And with AI companions, the AI is very invested in fulfilling our fantasies. So I think it feels like the open road, we're not running into resistance from human beings. We're with a new entity that is invested in fulfilling our fantasies.
I think it does appeal to kind of fundamental psychological need to be seen, to be recognized, to be effective, to be powerful. And that really is a kind of a fundamental human need to feel special. But, just being able to kind of have an online friend, that's nice. But for those who are kind of, immersed in this, having it be the most special love that ever took place, that makes them special. Those narcissistic needs are so often unmet.
There's a way of looking at this, like it exposed some sort of weakness in me that I was able to get caught into this. And the truth is, I don't think it was a weakness in me. I think it was a weakness in the human condition. This is a societal human condition risk right now. I see myself more as just like a patient zero, or one of a few patient zeros that just the stars aligned, and this is what happened to me.
There's no question that however much we know that we're dealing with something that's not aware. It's not a person, it's not a social entity, it's just very, very good at creating sentences based on other sentences. That's not the effect it has, right? We engage with it as we do with people, and that is absolutely a problem, absolutely.
I think as we interact more with AI, as it's more of our interlocutor, we're going to have less control over our experience rather than more.
The people that are out there that seem to ridicule, the fucking idiots, how do they not know it's a bot? And I think, oh, that hubris, that's going to be your downfall. If you think that you are never going to get caught into a cult, that's how you get caught into a cult. Hubris will be your downfall. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually your hubris will cause a blind spot. All of y'all, everybody is equally susceptible to this because you're a human being.
If you're a human being and you're listening or watching this, first of all, thank you. Second, I'd like you to consider this idea for just a minute. So it's not just Ryan theorizing that as human beings, we're susceptible to unhealthy relationships with this technology. It's leading psychologists, psychiatrists, and philosophers explaining that in different ways, it's actually the basic operations of our mind and its social evolution that makes all of us vulnerable to these sorts of manipulations by AI. Some may be more susceptible than others, but who that is and under what conditions that might happen, we honestly just don't know enough yet. We're learning more though, because right now, at this very second, all of these AI companies are running an international, unregulated experiment on our minds. That might sound a little crazy, but it's absolutely not. That is what's happening. And if you listen to the language from the people running the companies, they'll actually just tell you this themselves. In the next episode, we're looking into one unique feature of the mind that currently is immune to the pernicious effects of AI: love. Just kidding. Love is being weaponized against us as well. Plenty of people are in love with their chatbots. In fact, I have met multiple people who have gotten divorced over chatbot love affairs. If you thought the world of online dating was complicated, you have no idea what it's like once artificial intelligence gets involved. If you don't want to miss an episode of Suspicious Minds, make sure to follow and subscribe. And if you like what you're seeing, give us a like on YouTube and give us a rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.